Ramachandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 906. I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is Dan Hughes, Coach Dan Hughes. He coached in the WNBA with the San Antonio Stars, Seattle Storm. He won 2 championships in the WNBA, also 2-time Coach of the Year. And he was recently on the Olympic team with the U.S. Women's Assistant Coach. So we're going to get to all of that in Tokyo and everything else in his coaching career. And Dan, Coach Dan, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. It's truly an honor. And how are you and your family doing today?
Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate that. Doing well here and anxious to talk basketball.
Yeah, so I want to start off with your career growing up. And what was it like growing up in Ohio? You grew up in Ohio, and did you get to play any sports growing up? And who was your role model that you looked up to?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Lowell, Ohio, and it was a period in the early, I grew up in the early 60s, and a lot of my first memories of that era right there, people like Jerry West were huge influences. I lived on the border of West Virginia, and he was a huge, we didn't get very many TV stations, but we could get, some college out of West Virginia University. So he was a huge impact to me. I played basketball, I played baseball in a small town like a lot of us kids.
Wow. Yeah, so speaking of Jerry West, the logo of the Clippers, Lakers, you name it. So what's it like just to look up to him as a big role model and learn from him, because everybody can learn from him. He's one of the best out there.
Well, the part that really influenced me was being able to see him on TV and watch him play. Because back then, it wasn't like you can find a basketball game all year nowadays, and it wasn't like that back then. So seeing somebody who was so skilled offensively and all the things he could do, there was a very visual part to that. And then I read about him because we would get the Parkersburg News, which covered WVU quite a bit. So that was a big influence to read about him, to study, know him before he even went to the NBA, and then study him. It was a huge trail of understanding how basketball players become pros.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that you played multiple sports when you were younger. So how important is it now? This is a question I like to ask coaches a lot. So how important is it for kids now in this generation to play multiple sports and learn different aspects of it? Because I feel like whatever sport they choose in the long run, it will help them by learning multiple sports.
Well, I think in the beginning, it's very important that you expose, children to different sports, because to be honest with you, the specialization should come after a little bit of a taste of what the sport's like.
Yeah.
Because the thing about sports for young people is you have to enjoy it. It has to be fun. And I'm sorry if you make it into a business too early, sometimes there's a cause and effect that individual may tire of it. So I would want to foster where the fun begins, then go into specialization.
So tell our fans, when did you get interested in coaching, and tell us about your process when you got into coaching.
Well, growing up in this small town, 700 people, 800 people. There was a high school team in 1962-63 that went to the state tournament in Ohio, and it was our high school. And my mom and dad took me to the games. So it was my first exposure of really kind of following a team. And for whatever happened in that year, I was 7 years old. I loved the team. I watched everything. But the truth is, I identified with wanting to be a coach in that section of my life. And so that was the filter all the rest of my life. I know I'm going to be a coach. So, everything kind of continued in my mind from that time on. some people know what they want to be much later in life. I knew when I was 7, that's what I wanted to be.
So obviously you had a lot of coaching experiences, assistant coaches, and then before being a head coach. So what have you learned over the past years when you were growing as a coach and being assistant? What were the main things that you learned as assistant coach before getting a head coaching job?
I learned patience.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I was a head high school coach when I was 22 years old. I was the youngest head high school coach, and that was on the boys' side.
Oh, wow.
Because I coached men for 20 years and I coached women for 23.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was I was a head high school coach for 4 years, from 23 to 27. Then I was an assistant coach for 16 years. So getting a head job never came easy for me, being an assistant. I learned so much. But the thing that I learned was that sometimes later is greater. Right. Sometimes getting that job later, being able to be exposed to different people, and being involved with different players, especially, kind of learning not only from the coaches I worked with, but learning from the players that I was involved with, gave me an opportunity, when I was made a head coach, I think, to be more successful. Because I think a lot of times you might think you're ready, but the truth is you better be ready, because the shelf life of a coach is not very long if you don't win.
Right. Yeah, so I want to ask you, obviously, in Toledo, you're coaching Toledo, both men's and women. So obviously, what's it like coaching both men and women for almost 40 years, basically, you coached? And so what's it like just getting to coach both sides of it?
That's the most question I've been asked probably over the last 20 some years, to be honest with you. And it's a good one, but I think that people inquire about that. First of all, I would say to you, what I always begin this with is that I didn't find it a lot different. Mm-hmm. Players are players. Whether I was coaching men or I was coaching women, I found way more similarities than I did finding differences. But if I had to point to a couple things that I noticed, one was that women, there seems to be more verbal learners. Mm-hmm. The communication, people, we all learn in different ways. Right. All the teams I've had people that learn from repetition, learn from example, learn from verbal, learn from film, all kinds of ways. There were more verbal learners on the women's side, which I think why it was a good fit to me, because I'm real comfortable, relating that way to people. And then the second thing that I found was that within my teams, the women players very much cared how I coached their teammates to a greater degree than the men cared about how I coached their teammates. And those were the two things that I felt a little bit, but to be blunt again, really didn't feel much difference in the two. Players are players, right? And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. So explain to our fans that how do you get the opportunity with the San Antonio Stars, and tell us that process, and how grateful are you that they gave you the opportunity?
Well, I had been in Cleveland, and Cleveland, the ownership changed from Gordon Gunn to Dan Gilbert, and Dan Gilbert did not buy the WNBA part of the franchise. And so the team in Cleveland wasn't there anymore. So I was in a position to look for a new job in that situation. So the thing in San Antonio that was really interesting to me was there was a gentleman by the name of Bob Bass. Now, people that know the NBA know that name. Bob Bass was a legendary general manager. He had given me my first job in Charlotte. He had been the guy that kind of helped me get my first opportunity to be a head coach in the WNBA when he was part of the Charlotte Hornets organization. He was living in San Antonio. at that time.
Right.
And the Spurs organization, I was aware of the Spurs organization, and the Stars, they were called the San Antonio Stars, had come there from Utah about 2 or 3 years earlier, maybe 3 years earlier, and they had not been very successful. But I obviously had interest in that, and between the combination of the two, talking to Bob about that area, and then also wanting to be a head coach again in the WNBA. Luckily, I was afforded an opportunity to come to San Antonio, and that's really how it happened.
Wow. Yeah. So what was it like coaching San Antonio Stars? Obviously, a great franchise in the WNBA, and what was the atmosphere like for you guys there?
Well, when we got there, it wasn't very good. They hadn't won. They had not ever been in the playoffs or anything like that. So it was difficult. And I had been a builder through most of my career. That's kind of what I do. You usually, as a coach, you take over when things are struggling, and then you try to get them in the playoffs and then move up the ranks. Well, when I went there, it took me 2 years. I didn't get in the playoffs either of the first 2 years. That usually spells a problem for a professional coach.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I think the organization and the Spurs, I think, had a part in this. And the owner at that time, Peter Holt, they gave me a third year. And that third year was when we turned it around. That was when we went to the playoffs, went to the Western Conference Finals. But without that third year, obviously we would never have realized a lot of the things. And then I think we were in the playoffs 7 of the next 8 years. I think we advanced to the finals 1 year. I had a core of players until they kind of reached the end of their career that made us a threat every year to be a champion.
We had, speaking of San Antonio Stars, we had Thule on the show last year, the Australian player. She's amazing and inspiring. And but what was it like coaching like a player like Becky Hammon? Obviously a future Hall of Famer, and what a great career she had. And obviously now she's assistant coach for the Spurs. But what was it like coaching a type of player like her?
Well, not coincidentally, the year we went to the playoffs was the year we traded for Becky. That's when everything changed. It's a blessing to, when you coach people like Becky Hammon. Not only is it great from the standpoint of the player she is, it was great from the standpoint of the leader she was.
Right.
And the other thing that it just was pure creative magic to be on the sidelines and watch her make plays that, sometimes I would watch her, go up in the air, twist the body, do some things. And I'm thinking, early in my career, I'm thinking, well, this isn't going to turn out good.
You're right.
And it would. And by the end of the year, I coached her 8 years. By the end of that time, when she would go into one of those moments, I was just curious to see how it would end positively, because it did.
Right.
And she was utterly amazing in regard to angles, and a great three-point shooter, a great passer. But her creative finishes in traffic among big people is legendary. I mean, they could put together a highlight tape that would just astound any basketball lover to see how she finished on some of those plays.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, and she's going to go down as one of the best players in the WNBA. But moving along to now you go to Seattle Storm, another great franchise, a championship winning team, and you obviously won 2 of them there. So what was it like coaching Seattle Storm? You had players like Breanna Stewarts, Sue Bird. I can go down the list, but mainly those 2 players there. But what was it like coaching Seattle Storm and coming from San Antonio and going to Seattle?
Well, I had, I had retired out of San Antonio. I thought I was at the end of my run. My son was going into college basketball at the U.S. Air Force Academy and playing in the Mountain West. And I thought, well, it's a good time for me to watch him and do all that. But then after about a year, this opportunity from Seattle came, and my wife and I looked at each other, and you're talking about Sue Bird, you're talking about Breanna Stewart, and you're talking about Jewel Lloyd. Those three, you can't say no to having an opportunity to coach those players. And so it was a blessing to have an overtime period in my career, so to speak, and to have a chance to be around those players. Cerebral, talented leaders. They hadn't been successful, but you just knew they were on the doorstep of it because of the combination of talents and mentality that they had. And so, it just was a true blessing. I can't think of any other word, to be involved with them in the latter stages of my career, both in Seattle and then with USA Basketball.
Wow. Yeah, so obviously, everybody talks about these big threes in the NBA and WNBA, but you got to coach three quality all-star players like Jewel Lloyd, Breanna Stewart, and Sue Bird. What do you say? I don't know, but would you say this would be the best big three you coached in the WNBA? Do you think this is the best big three right now?
Oh yeah, Jiminy Christmas. I can't think of any better. It was funny. I was in San Antonio on the watching the NBA very, very closely, and they had Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and Tim Duncan. That third really great player, that is where you really go to some of the special kind of opportunities from a championship standpoint. And those three certainly afforded me opportunities and championships because of not only the talent that they brought, but just the package, the totality of their leadership abilities and their mentality and their being good teammates. That's why it was so interesting to me. I didn't really have to make a lot of changes in the culture in regard to teammates, because they were already great teammates when I arrived there, and I just worked real hard not to screw them up.
So so obviously last year we went through a struggle with the pandemic, and for you as a coach, what have you learned from the past year when the sport shut down? We didn't all of us didn't know what's going to happen. But when the sports came back and you guys were able to play in the bubble, both WNBA and NBA played in the bubble that year. So what have you learned as a coach from last year till now?
Well, you go through a long life in coaching, and you think, well, hey, I've this is how I do it.
Right.
Well, life isn't that way. You got to constantly find different ways to be successful under situations just like you talked about. The aspect of being able to be a positive factor as a coach in a virtual age with a pandemic, with all the restrictions that entails. That really proves the point that I think change is inevitable, and you have to find different ways to be a teacher, find different ways to be a coach, to empower people sometimes, much like we're doing right now.
Right.
I think that's the biggest lesson that a lot of us has learned, because we've had to do it in less than what we would say normal ways from 10 years ago.
Yeah, so this is a two-part question here. The first one, if you want to talk about adversity, I want to ask you about Breanna Stewart's injury that she overcame. Obviously, she overcame a horrific injury, and for her to be able to come back and play at a high level still is amazing. So, speaking of her, what was it like seeing her rehab from that injury, come back strong, still playing at a high level now, and then the next part to this question, take us to the 2 championship runs you guys had. And obviously, it's always tough to win championships in sports.
Well, in Stewie's case, I was able to watch her, in 2019. I have all these memories of she was unable to play. Sue or her, neither one played in 2019. And quite honestly, that was one of my years that I feel the best about because we still won 19 games and went to the playoffs and advanced and all that. But while we were oftentimes practicing, I'd look out the corner of my eye and there would be Stewie either getting treatment or working on the side. And it did not surprise me at all that she was able to rebound so well. Because to me, I think that the reality was that she really put the work in. And Stewie is an incredibly talented player.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
But she also has a very blue collar mentality. She works at the game like somebody who has to work hard to be successful.
Right.
Yet she is blessed. That's why she is who she is. That combination of those two things. And so the fact that she took on this challenge to recover from this Achilles and worked that hard and did it intelligently and put herself back on the world's biggest stage and was successful didn't surprise me at all. And the second part of your thing is that the thing about championships, and I spent a lot of time talking to Greg Popovich years ago back in San Antonio about what was his observations of championships, because I believe Pop has 5, but he talked about, you got to have the personnel, you got to have some of the players, like you talk about a big 3. You got to have those things to evolve. But the third thing he said is you got to have some luck. Mm-hmm. And luck meaning that you stay healthy, to me, or that you get healthy during that playoff run. Those are the things he talked to me about, honestly, were what I observed, in my Seattle teams, that those things kind of fell in line, and the health part is very, very powerful. Do you have a healthy team that has its rhythm as you go into those series of really key playoff games?
Yeah. So after you winning those 2 championships, what was it like? The atmosphere, like the fans, and celebrating in front of your fans, and obviously with your players that you coached, and what was that feeling like winning those 2 championships as a coach?
Well, they were different in regard to, we were in the pandemic in 2020.
Right. Yeah.
You didn't necessarily feel the presence like you did in 2018. It was absolutely amazing. When we won that year, we won on the road. We actually played Washington and won there, came home, and they had a parade just a couple days after we got back. I think it was on a Sunday. I had never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, they put us on this little trolley car and we're kind of going through the parade, but seeing the people stretching the streets just touched my heart. I mean, it was amazing. The people lined up on the route that took us, and we ended up back at Key Arena at that point, and then had a kind of a rally at that point. But seeing the people coming out from Seattle, you never forget that.
Right.
You never are not moved by the expression of love that you see from these fans, for the WNBA, for the Seattle Storm, for women's basketball. And the way I just looked, and it just all the way down the street,
right.
20, 30 deep, people standing,
Wow.
wanting to celebrate with you. Trust me, that will never leave this bank of memories that I have.
So obviously I don't know I hate to put you on the spot here, but where would you, obviously you coached Becky Hammon and Sue Bird, so where would you rank those two point guards if you guys do, if you were in a situation where you had to do rankings, where would you put those two point guards?
Oh, I'd put them at the very top. And I am probably the worst person in the world to ask about who's better, because I don't know if that really matters.
Yeah.
It's like, is John Lennon a better composer than Paul McCartney?
Right.
I'm not going to answer that. They both are just phenomenal, and so is Beck, and so is Sue. And I'm so glad that the thing that I would say is that, in a long career, I've been blessed to be probably have coached the greatest point guards.
Yeah.
Any coach, coaching of men or women, has ever accumulated. I have been around the best in the game from my standpoint at that point position, and that's about the best I could say. And those two are definitely the best.
So now I want to get to your experience now, obviously with USA women's basketball assistant coach this year when you guys went to Tokyo. What was that like experience? Like obviously in different circumstances with no fans there, you guys had to wear masks. But what was it like the travel like there, and what was the players feeling like when they said there's no fans going to be there this year?
Well, I think they had a little bit of experience because of the WNBA bubble the year before. They all had, or most of them, not all, but most of them had experienced that. So it was probably the best basketball experience I can point to for anybody, and including me. The basketball experience, we started from a position where we had to get better. We got to a point that in the medal round, we were very, very, very good, very good. And we did that. You didn't have the ability to really see the city. You didn't have the ability to reach out and touch the other sports.
Right.
The one thing we got to do was go to the men's games, and the men got to come to our game. So that expression was very, very special. Wow. To be able to do that. But I think anytime you have a chance to represent your country in the Olympics, you want to do every single thing you can to bring home the gold. And that was an incredible situation to watch these athletes exactly do that.
Did you catch up with Coach Pop there when you were there?
Yeah, that was. We traveled over there on the same plane.
Okay.
We went over on one of these really nice planes and flew directly from Vegas with them to Tokyo. And we were together in the front of the plane with the coaching staff of the men, and able to interact a lot. And we ate together in the same dining situation. They had an area they ate, we had an area we ate, but we got our food in the same spot. And so we interacted a lot. And I knew a lot of Pop's staff because they had all passed through a lot of times working with him. And they went through a very similar experience like us, starting out slow, getting the gold in that regard. And I will forever treasure that. That as difficult as it was to not really be able to experience fans and the city, but being able to experience a kind of an intense interaction with our team and with the men's team, that's just a hidden gem in a situation that it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy where we were. We had to really take care of ourselves from a health standpoint, and the players did, we did, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Yeah, and also you got to assist in my opinion, one of the best women college coaches out there for South Carolina, Dawn Staley. You got to help her out win that gold medal. And What was it like working with her in this year's Olympics, Dawn Staley?
Pure joy. Pure joy. I started my first coaching assignment as an interim head coach. Dawn was my point guard in Charlotte,
Oh, wow.
and 1999.
Hmm.
So to circle around now 21 years later and to be on a staff with her,
Hmm.
she did an incredible job. It was not easy. This
Right.
was not an easy situation. The
Yeah.
way we came together, and we had 6 new players and we had 6 returning Olympians.
Hmm.
And to mold that team and to do that, she did a phenomenal job. Just a phenomenal job. And it was evidenced by where we ended up in the medal round. That the way that those 3 games that we had to play to win the gold, we had gotten to a dominant position, and that had a lot to do with Don's leadership.
Yeah, and speaking of they had a new new style 3-on-3 tournament. What do you guys like about that? USA, both women and men's were in there, and obviously Kelsey Plum and AJ Wilson and those other players. Like, what do you guys like about that 3-on-3 tournament?
Oh, I thought it was great. I really wish we could have gone. They did not allow us
Oh, wow.
to go to the games, so we didn't get to experience. But we watched it on TV. It looked thrilling to me. The venue that they played in, it being outdoors, the intensity of a shortened game that they basically play from. I think that sport is just going to grow and grow and grow. And it afforded, we have a very rich pool of pro women's basketball players, and I think it had afforded 4 more players an opportunity to be part of something that ultimately turned out gold. But I think that sport is just going to continue to grow, much like the sand volleyball and has grown from an Olympic inner standpoint. I think the 3-on-3 from a basketball standpoint is just going to grow and grow as an Olympic sport.
Yeah, so take us to the gold medal game now. Obviously, you guys won the gold, and after the game, I saw Sue Bird said, Sue Bird said that she was going to retire from the Olympics. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe she was joking, or is that I don't know if she's for real. But take us to that gold medal game, and what was the message from Dawn Staley to the team?
Well, I think the thing that I really watched Dawn, because I was with Dawn when we won the gold in the World Cup, and then I was with Dawn when we won the gold in the Olympics. She is really good in those moments. She knows how to speak to the fact of embracing that we are in a position to be champions and how to take that next step. Mm-hmm. And I watched her articulate it, before we played Australia in, I guess it was 218. And then now I watched her do it in 221 with Japan, because Japan was a concern. You're playing the host country.
Right.
You are playing a team that has unique style. They were small, quick, and a phenomenal 3-point shooting team. Mm-hmm. This was not just your normal kind of basketball team. This was one that was built to challenge a team like the United States that has, long, big post players. So now we got to go out, and so it was a nerve-wracking preparation, because they were different, know, and quite simply, it was an advantage. We had played them in pool play, so we had a little bit of an idea coming in, a little bit of how they play, and I was very glad for that fact. But all that being said, we had the better team. I thought Dawn did a great job of preparing the team to understand we've got to play this game as the best team, confident, but also very focused on what we had to do. And I thought the team responded greatly.
So a couple more things before I let you go. And what are your thoughts on a player like Diana Taurasi? You got to coach her on the U.S. Olympic team, obviously, and she's one of the best in my opinion also. And when it comes to talent, and what are your thoughts on Diana Taurasi?
Much more fun coaching her rather than coaching against her.
Yeah.
Where I've spent most of my career. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even close. Through the years, trying to come up with defensive schemes to slow down, let alone stop Diana Taurasi has been very unproductive for most of us coaches. And the thing that she does when you're around her, coaching her, the thing that she does is I think she brings the best of herself in moments where she's got to be the best. When you're in that gold medal game, if people would just go back and watch her passing, let alone her scoring, but watch her passing, she is a phenomenal passer, and you could really see it on the bench. You're watching it, and we were able to go inside in that game, but she really, I thought, was on task to know where we needed to have the ball time and time again as you watched her play. And people always talk about her shooting, which is legendary, but I will also tell you, take a good look at her passing and take a look at how she plays in big games. She's more than ready for that moment.
Yeah, she reminds me of Steve Nash a little bit from the men's side, for sure. Yeah. So I want to ask you here. Obviously, you won 2 championships. You won 2 Coach of the Year awards, and obviously you're a gold medalist. What's the next steps for you? Do you see yourself coaching again in the WNBA, or obviously you're still with the USA team too? And do you see yourself maybe if an NBA opportunity comes up for you, assistant coach in the NBA or head coach, or what's the next steps for you?
Well, I think I'm done coaching in the WNBA. I feel very blessed. 20 over 20 years of doing it. And I feel like that's a section of my life that I think I am very thankful for, but I'm probably not going to revisit. I'm going to coach something.
Okay.
It might be my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
It might be other coaches. It might be, I don't know exactly where it's going to take me, but retirement to me doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to stop being the person I am. I'm going to continue to be a coach of some type. I love coaching coaches. I love empowering people. That it still matters to me. And I don't see myself in the WNBA as a head coach any longer, but I do see myself somehow, whatever God's plan is out here. And you mentioned, so I don't know where it's going to end up, but if it just ends up me coaching my grandkids and me staying in touch with coaches that have coached with me, then that's a good life too. But it's going to be something. I am not going to sit in a rocking chair. That I will always be working to teach and empower people.
So the last 2 things here before I let you go, our team, we're part of this foundation. It's called the Hughes Jackson Foundation. We're trying to help them prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So we'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Okay, that's the thing that I feel fortunate. I've been afforded a wonderful career in a lot of ways, and now it's about giving back.
Yeah,
a little bit about looking around this world and saying, okay, I've been very fortunate, but what can I do today to make tomorrow better?
right. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers right now?
Oh yeah, just at 9/11 the other day, a lot of my thoughts went to first responders and went to so many people. Being a cancer survivor, watching how people invested in me, in those key moments when you're working your way through some of the health things we all have. Just can't say enough. I believe that that's something that we need to do a better job of in our world. And that's saying thank you. I think we can do way better at that. And to those type of people of which you mentioned, a big thank you. And I think we need to look around this world and find ways to say thanks to people that are doing things for all of us.
Yeah, well said. And that wraps up episode 906 with the great Dan Hughes, former WNBA coach, two-time WNBA champion, two-time WNBA coach of the year. He was the youngest high school coach to be the head coach in high school, and he's a gold medalist for Team USA Women. But I just want to say thank you for joining the show today. It was truly an honor. We have to get you in the Hall of Fame. I think your resume speaks for itself, and keep up the great work. And we would like to have you back on the show at some point so you can meet the full team. But like I said, you're a great coach, and keep it up. And you and your family stay safe.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
All the best.
Thank you.
All righty. Take care.